all women of all kinds and all women of color. We are beautiful, we are powerful, we are magical, we're fun, we're funny, we're flirty, we're all of these things. We contain multitudes. My intention behind wanting to be a writer is really to normalize and to humanize women and our experiences, but specifically for me as a Muslim woman, I want to create characters, specifically woman characters, girls, and normalize them and humanize them and de-vilify and demystify and de-victimize us in terms of what our perception and representation in the cultural consciousness.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maju Valley, and I'm the community manager here in She's the Universe. And today I'm here with Aisha. I hope I'm pronouncing right. Is Aisha?
It's Aisha.
Aisha. Okay. Thank you. So I'm here with Aisha, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her career and her trajectory as a writer so far. So for those who don't know, She's the Universe is our organization, NGO organization that support girls from all over the world. We develop soft and hard skills for girls to be not only the leaders of the change, but also of their lives. And A Woman's Place is a program focused on bringing amazing women from different fields to share a little bit about their story, about their careers, and of course, inspire many girls around the world. So I'm here with Aisha, and yeah, I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Aisha. I am in Los Angeles, where I live and where I work. I'm a screenwriter and a writer of fiction and a writer of all kinds. I have been living in LA for the past 4 years and have been working in the industry in Hollywood for the past 3 years. I moved out to LA after graduating Harvard, and there I never honestly thought about screenwriting at all. I was very into books. I loved reading, I loved writing, but I never thought that this was possibly in the cards for me. So to all of you out there listening, it totally is possible, and things change and shift all the time. And it wasn't until I had the smallest inkling of, wait, I kind of want to tell stories, let me take a shot. So after moving to LA, I was working as an assistant for a few months for a film producer and his television partner, and things started moving and shifting. And after a few months, I got representation, which is just a fancy word for managers. And then after a few months after that, I entered my first writer's room for Miss Marvel, which happens to be about a young Pakistani girl growing up in New Jersey who then gets superpowers. And I happen to be a young woman who's Pakistani and Muslim from New Jersey. I don't have superpowers, at least literally, working on it metaphorically. And from there, it's just been a really fun adventure of various writers' rooms and writing for television.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. So let's start by talking about your interest in writing. So it was something that was always there. It was something that kind of just came up. How was that path?
Yeah, so I've always loved writing. Like ever since I was a little girl, I mean, I would read like the back of cereal boxes. I would read anything and everything. I loved reading so much. And with writing, I always knew that I wanted to write fiction and write stories, but I had a fear. And so it honestly was a progression in terms of giving myself permission to write stories. I realized like I'm the only one who can give myself permission. So it took a long time. When I was really little and I was so unself-conscious in elementary school, I would write stories. But then in middle school, I think I got a little shy and self-conscious. So I started writing poetry, and I found that it could flow out of me, but I still kind of kept them hidden. And then in high school, I started expanding and performing the poems, sharing them. And then in college, it also was a gradual process where I started writing articles, and I thought, okay, maybe journalism. And then something hit me and I was like, girl, you really want to write stories. You want to write fiction. And that's when it shifted to fiction writing. And then it still took a few more years until after college where I was like, oh, I want to write TV and movies. And that's where so it was a really progression of just honestly realizing that I was the only one holding myself back in terms of what I thought was possible in the scope of what the writing could be. And so it's been a gradual process of just learning, oh, I could write anything if I just give myself permission to.
I imagine that this process has been brought some doubts and some fears. So how did you deal with that in order for you to accept this passion and actually work with it?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. I feel that I wish I could show you the thing that I have this a tarot card that I got my friend to draw and redraw. And so it's a South Asian woman at the center, and she's holding, and it says the magician, and it's the tarot card, which means that we are the magicians of our lives, right? And there's a verse from the Quran. I'm Muslim and I'm a practicing Muslim. And so for me, faith is something that really helps me alchemize as a magician, my fears and doubts into faith and trust and surrender. And there's a verse from the Quran on the card that says, kun fayakun, be and it is. And I remember and I realized like, oh, I am the writer of my life. Like I just have to say be and it is. I can control things or in some ways, and among them my emotions. And so sometimes when I'm overcome by fear and by doubt, I think, oh, okay, how can I transmute? How can I alchemize this emotion? How can I alchemize guilt into gratitude, or fear into faith, or competitiveness and competition into community and collaboration? And I realized, okay, there's something that can shift in the moment. So in those moments, I honestly turn to the Quran, I turn to prayer, and then I actually turn to a frame from Miss Marvel, which I have printed. I like photocopied it and I carry it around in my purse like a talisman. And it's a frame from the comic, and it says it's Miss Marvel, and she's standing when she first gets powers with her hands on her hips. And the lines from the comics are a verse from Rumi, where it's wherever you are was circled on a map for you. And there's a word in Arabic from the Quran, and actually from the alchemist as well, that in the bracelet for Miss Marvel is inscribed from the show. And it's a word called maktub. It is written. And it's the idea that our lives, our destinies are actually written, and there's a kind of trust and surrender, and that we just have to let ourselves be the actors and writers who then just bring that story down to fruition on this earth plane. And so sometimes when I'm like, oh my gosh, I just remember, okay, it's written, it's whatever is for me will come to me, and you can't miss your destiny. And so in terms of like, if your dream is really your destiny, then hopefully, in divine timing, it'll align.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And one thing that you said that I really loved was that transform competitiveness into community.
Yeah.
And we know that for women, like we have like the extra pressure of succeed. And the world tell us that if one woman succeed, the other cannot. So, and especially in this industry that you're in, there's a lot of competitiveness. So how did you turn that around and create this community where you can thrive and it's healthy?
I feel like I've honestly been very fortunate where I entered Hollywood and the industry at a time where things were shifting. So even the discourse around Me Too, there was more cognizance and consciousness of a woman's place, and rightfully so, at the table, and also being treated with respect on all levels. So I think that was shifting. And also, honestly, the idea of authentic representation. So those two things were already part of the cultural discourse that I feel like I entered a time where I'm not the only woman who's Pakistani, who's Muslim, who's a writer. My first room Miss Marvel happened to be about that. And I was sitting next to a woman who was in a position of power who looked like me. And that was really empowering. And I realized it's really rare that like maybe 5 or 2 or a year before that, it wouldn't have happened. So I think in terms of like community, I realized like, oh, to make anything in life, whether it's an interview, it takes 2, right? Or a movement, as we see all across today, or a show or a movie or anything, it takes a lot of people. And I realize like the self can only do so much. So creation is a collaborative process. So it's whenever I feel any kind of competitiveness, I remember 2 things. 1, it takes community to create. And number 2, everyone's on their own path and journey and timing. And it goes back to Makhtub. It is written like what's written for you is your own special story. And you're the hero of that story. And I'm the hero of mine. And we're all the heroes of each other's. And it's kind of like community of people who are all heroes, just on their own timelines. And so to respect and honor that person's and your own in the name of community.
That's really beautiful and really powerful, honestly. So thank you so much for sharing that. The next question is about when you started on this career on writing shows. You said that Ms. Marvel was on one of the first shows that you wrote.
Yeah.
So how was the process of wanting to be a writer to doing a show, a big show like Ms. Marvel? So how was this process?
I feel like I was very fortunate. I think I got very lucky in terms of a lot of things just like happening and in terms of the timing. I will say the one thing that really changed my career was making a website. And again, that goes back to permission. I was like, who am I to make a website? What do I have to show? And the actual thing is, it helps when people can find you. If in terms of writing, I realized like, oh, if I just I had a couple stories, short stories on the web, if I could put them on, like then people can read them and find them. And if they like them, they can reach out to me. And that's what led me to get representation from managers, which then helped me get into my first writer's room. So I realized in terms of putting myself out there and not feeling any guilt or shame or who am I, and actually just being like, let me try. If it's, what's the worst that can happen? If I had the means to make a website, then just, so I think that was the biggest thing. And I would definitely advocate for people, whether it's a website, whether it's a LinkedIn page or an Instagram page, for whatever services or artistry or specific talent or that you have and that you want to cultivate and that you want people to see, you put yourself out there in whatever form that might take.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. You were talking about like when you started to talk about the website, I was started to think about me. I was like, yeah, I would never create a website. Like I felt exactly like you said, like, yeah, I don't have anything to show for people. But now I'm rethinking that. So thank you so much for that. I think it's really important. And it's a little bit about empowering your own self,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Like you have to believe in yourself and that you're worthy of being seen and worthy of being reached out to. And then the people will come. I mean, I do believe in like even just the energetics of that. But sometimes taking that first step, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. And that can be galvanizing enough in itself.
That's really amazing. Thank you so much for bringing this tip. And so for the girls who maybe are thinking of being a writer or just don't know a little bit about this industry, could you explain a little bit about it?
Any TV show that's made, I'll talk specifically about TV because that's what I have experience in. You'll see at the very end, there are lots of credits. I mean, there's so many hands that need to make a TV show. But in terms of the writers, there's actually a writer's room that is comprised of usually a showrunner, a head writer, and a bunch of other writers that will break the stories, that will come up with ideas for the episodes and then write the scripts. And it's actually a very communal, collaborative process of creation, of co-creation, really. My profession and job is being one of the writers in that room for various shows and helping come up with ideas and writing the scripts, and that then become the episodes you see on screen. In terms of getting there are some contests that are out there. There are some screenwriters labs that help cultivate first the craft of how to write a script. And number two, the resources that will get you representation, managers or agents that will then usually help you get into the writer's room in the first place. Before you become a writer, you can become a writer's assistant and you help them take notes and you do contribute as well. So there are different pathways and avenues to getting into the room. The first and foremost thing is just practice writing. And there's some books out there, and Google is amazing too, of how to even write a screenplay in the first place. And then looking at labs that are international, that are regional focus as well, that can help you nurture your craft and get you the right people and resources who can then get you into writer's room.
Because you were talking a little bit about how it is to be a writer, and it's such a non-linear path.
Yeah.
And that sometimes can be scary.
Yeah.
And especially when you think about some other more quote unquote established careers. I don't think that any career is 100% safe, but so one of the established careers. In any point when you were in this path to allowing yourself to be a writer, how did that thought of, okay, maybe I should do something more on quote unquote stable came? And how did you deal with that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was very much on a linear path. I mean, I was in Harvard and I was going to go pursue higher education to get my PhD. And I thought that that stable career was for me. And I thought, okay, maybe that's the way I could write, critically writing, not necessarily creative or, one form of writing. So in terms of this path, I think the doubts come, right? And it is unstable. So I think two things. One, that's where financially like assistant jobs come in and like are really helpful. And number two, in terms of the emotionality and just the doubts and fears that come up throughout, it's really just like trusting and really like, oh, I really want to do this. I'm really leaning into that. I find that the older I get, the younger I feel, because I realize that youth is not just an age, it's a feeling, I believe, and really embodying it allows me to believe in possibility and giving myself permission. So I think returning to just that youthful sense of buoyancy and optimism, like, oh my gosh, I'm here, I get to do it, or I get to even try to do it, and keeping the enthusiasm going, keeping your own fire lit. I think that's something I really learned in this career, because sometimes there are a lot of ups and downs and oh my gosh, and it's just keeping that fire lit. And for me, that is going back to watching the shows I love, going back to watching the movies I love, going back to reading the comics I love and the books and thinking like, oh, okay, I do love storytelling enough. And if I feel like if you love the thing enough, that love will be what kindles the fire and keeps it burning, keeps it alive. And it's just finding what that is for you.
I had a music teacher, and before I started working here, I was really into music, and I really thought I wanted that for a career. I don't think that anymore, and it's totally fine. I still love music. But she said something that, because people, when I think every art area, people think to have that thing, okay, you're not gonna make money. And she told me something that like, if you're really good at something, people will pay for it. Mm-hmm. So that really came up to me when you say that. So it's really, really interesting to see that and how that's true, right? Like there's the love. Of course, love is not the only thing that fires up a career, but
yeah,
it's definitely one of the most important things for you to keep going. So thank you so much. So for my next question is that I believe that purpose is behind of any career that we are in, and that's and sometimes it's very related, sometimes it's not. So how would you say is your purpose as a writer?
Yeah, what I try to remember and return to is my intention behind wanting to be a writer is really to normalize and to humanize women and our experiences, but specifically for me as a Muslim woman, that's very important to me, and it is a salient aspect of my identity. So I want to create characters, specifically women characters, girls, and normalize them and humanize them and de-vilify and demystify and de-victimize us in terms of what our perception and representation in the cultural consciousness. And I feel like for me personally, I'm like Muslim women, Pakistani women, and all women of all kinds and all women of color, we are beautiful, we are powerful, we are magical, we're fun, we're funny, we're flirty, we're all of these things. We contain multitudes and multiple dimensions. And I believe that stories can bring that to life and to light and show people that. And that's my intention, to do just that through stories.
That's amazing. And that's what Ms. Marvel does, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So coming back a little bit to your experience as a writer, how was the experience of writing such an important character, not only now for TV, but also in the comics? A character that represents so many girls who feel their voice unheard. So how was this process of creating something so unique, but at the same time inside an industry that is so white dominated and so male dominated?
Yeah, so I was part of the writer's room for that, which means that there were so many there's so many hands, so many people in that room, and then of course so many afterwards in terms of production and with the directors. So I feel very fortunate that Marvel really from the beginning was so committed to creating and bringing to life and showing on air an authentic character that they really brought the people who they felt, and I do believe were so aligned with making Kamala and Miss Marvel so unique, but also so universal and so herself, right? So unapologetically, authentically Muslim and Pakistani and a young girl. So I just feel so lucky that our head writer was Bishop K. Ali. We had an EP, Sana Amanat, who was a co-creator of the comics, Sharmeen Obey Shinoy, who is a director. I mean, there's so many powerful Muslim women. I mean, Iman herself there. I mean, and just you think about all of the people and so many others. I mean, in the room, there was Bisha, there was a woman named Fatima Asghar, Saber Pirzada. All of these were Pakistani writers, many of them women as well, who all of us together really could draw from our own life experiences and then imbue that into the characters. So I feel like it was just such a fun experience and very collaborative and communal. And actually, like, Marvel was so excited and so supportive, and were amazing allies in bringing it to life. So in terms of how it came, I think we got really lucky that it was such a special collaborative project.
That's beautiful. And as a Marvel fan, I get so happy to see this representation, because it's necessary. It's like more like we need that, like, on this representation, and that's just beautiful. So thank you. So for my next question, I love to know what is your plans for the future? Where do you see yourself in the future as a writer? What are your ambitions?
Yeah, well, I want to do it all in terms of writing. I think, as I was saying before, I thought, I started off so small in terms of what I thought I could write, and even in the mediums and the genres. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to make shows about Muslim women. I want to make like the Brown Girls version of Girls, a coming of age show, or to write movies, to write plays, to do it all, novels, short stories, truly anything and everything in terms of medium and genre, as long as it's writing and that it centers Muslim women and children. I would love to try it all. So I am like, this, it's a blank slate in terms of what I hope and can imagine and project into the futures, because we're all magicians.
I absolutely love this magician. And I don't know how to say that in English exactly, but I really love that. I think it's so beautiful.
I know. I wish I could, do you want me to do that thing and show you?
Sure.
Because it's so, I do it every day. It's literally, it's truly.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it's like a reimagined magician who's a Muslim woman. And so there's a Quran here, there's a book of Rumi poetry, there's prayer beads, there's lipstick, of course. And she's holding a hookah pipe. And there's a verse from the Quran in the hookah pipe, and that's kun fayakun, be, and it is. And so I look at it all the time before I write, and I remember, okay, like, I'm a magician, you're a magician, we all contain magic, especially as women. We have such magic, and the world should see it.
Yeah, I agree. Oh my God, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of that and a little bit as part of your culture. I think it's really, really beautiful. So thank you. I feel very fortunate to learn about that.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for being so open.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most beautiful things, especially when it comes to the art world, on every type of art, on these bringing more different perspectives, because we live in such a Eurocentric world. Then bringing these different perspectives, these different cultures, I don't know, I just feel like make everything richer and more beautiful. So I'm just loving this conversation. I'm learning not only about writing, but about your culture. I think this is beautiful. So My next question is a little bit like more about the writing process.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of friends who write, and one thing that they always fear is that after they end writing something, they are like, okay, what if I'm not gonna write something as good as that? Like, and I know that's a super normal feeling, but have you ever felt that, and how did you deal with that?
All the time. Every time I finish one thing, I feel that. I was just feeling it this morning when I was writing at Starbucks. And I have learned to make peace with the feeling. And I realize that it lasts for a shorter duration each time because I trust and know that it is fleeting and that, like the magician, I can transmute it. And I think how I usually try to overcome it is whatever the next thing is, just writing and not caring about whether or not it's good, and trying not to put an evaluative statement, and remembering like, oh, it's supposed to be fun, or it can be fun, and leaning into the pleasure rather than the desire for perfection or good, and then taking those labels off of it helped me to overcome the feeling.
That's really nice. That's really good. Thank you so much for that. And so we are coming to the end of this interview. So one of my last questions is, what would you say to a girl from wherever the world she's watching and dreams to be a writer, not necessarily a TV writer, but loves writing and want to put this art out there?
I would say that it's so special the fact that you desire it, what you seek is seeking you, to quote Miss Marvel. And I really believe that if you have that dream, just grab a pen and grab a paper, or grab whatever parchment the equivalent of is, and just write. Just put pen to paper, and know that to be a scribe, I believe, is one of the most sacred things in the world. Like, you get to create, and it just goes from your brain and then it's out there. So just what you have is so special, that dream, that desire, and that gift. So use it, and just keep writing. Don't ever stop, and don't let anyone let you stop, whether it's the voice in your head or a voice outside.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And for the end, I'd just like you to share a little bit how people can connect with you and to continue this conversation.
Absolutely. So I have my website, which is just aishabori.com, and there is a messaging kind of section of the website that you can totally reach out to me through that section and just drop me a note, and I would love to hear from you. And I hope that this has been helpful, and I'm rooting for all the girls out there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aisha, for your time, for sharing your stories, for sharing a little bit about your culture, for sharing your trajectory. I think what you're doing is so special and so necessary and important. And I am just really thankful for your presence here, and thankful for your work too. So I just want to say thank you. And yeah, so we are coming to the end of this interview. This was really special. I really hope that everyone who's watching got the same feeling that I'm having right now, which is happiness. And I hope this helped you in any way to understand more about the writing world, to understand more about the career world and all of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, which is bringing up other people's stories and sharing them. That's such an honorable act. And I hope that anyone who's helped, that you receive also what they received in Manifold. And just thank you for your service.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of A Woman's Voice. This podcast is produced by teenage girls like me from the Girls Galaxy community and She's the Universe, a global movement for girls empowerment.